Hey, what's going on? It's a little sneak show for Friday. This is the Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. I have $3,000 in lease cash that I can divvy up amongst the masses over the next several days. It'll help you get an amazing lease on an amazing truck at a payment that's not too adult. Kind of like an amateur payment on a big league vehicle. At Norman Oak Ridge Ford is how you're going to get at me. It is Friday, February 21st, 2025, Norman, London. Mike in Buffalo. We're doing this show because the Sunday Spectacular is going to be pushed off a week. Mike and I are both busy. We're coming off a pretty interesting Four Nations Faceoff, Canada and the United States, with a little rematch in Boston. The Canadians taking it 3-2 in overtime. Who else? Connor McDavid, the man, the myth, the magic. In the next 10 years, Mike, if he plays to the same clip he has so far, we may say he's the best player ever, but we can have that discussion between now and then. I want to talk a little bit about that face-off event with you, Mike. How did Marner and Matthews do from your perspective? We'll tee up Hurricanes Leafs on Saturday. Get ready for the trade deadline, which is in 2 weeks' time. Mm-hmm. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Norm. Well, I mean, I'm let's just say this, and sometimes, you know, when everybody is looking east, I'm looking west.
Yep.
It has nothing to do, because I was saying this all throughout, nothing to do with the end result. I have never seen a more overblown tournament in my life than the NHL Four Nations Faceoff. Now, it's one thing if you're going to carve out 2 weeks in February for the Olympics. The Olympics are the Olympics. This was an NHLPA created event made to make money, pure and simple. And I think the NHL, you know, because the whole thing, you know, coming out afterward was, you know, the ratings were fantastic. I had to, okay, fine, but you have to say that the NHL lucked out that Donald Trump is an idiot and a loudmouth and a troll, because the whole thing of the, you know, and I'm not going to get into the political aspect of it, but the whole back and forth, the 51st state bullshit, all that crap created the booing in Montreal, the hype of the 3 fights in 9 seconds, the response in Boston, you know, two guys sitting behind Mike Sullivan that maybe they didn't see that on the Sportsnet broadcast, but on the ESPN broadcast, 2 morons wearing MAGA hats.
Right.
Well, the
Kachuk brothers and Bill Guerin didn't help either. Bill Guerin wanted Trump to come to the game. The Kachuk brothers talking about, you know, especially Matt, I'd never play for Canada. But you'd expect that from those guys because they get caught up in the fervor. They get caught up in the hype. The same way fans got caught up in the hype. Wasn't it a cacophony of just perfection from the NHL's perspective, whether you want to give Donald Trump credit for it or not?
No, well, first of all, I think the NHL should send a thank you letter to Donald Trump because he helped whip this into a frenzy. And, right. You know, and the Kachuk brothers, I mean, remember, their dad played on the 96 team that beat Canada.
Right.
And so that was, you know, that was the highlight of his career. He never won a Stanley Cup. He never won an Olympic gold medal. That was the highlight of his career. So, you know, and somebody made a really good point about I think it was Rachel Dory, who I'm friendly with. She said something to the effect of, I'm glad that Bill Guerin, and I don't know if she mentioned the Kachucks, but Bill Guerin obscured the real reason that the Americans were motivated to win, which was Johnny Gaudreau, and instead, you know, it was all this, you know, the Trudeau Trump baloney. It's like, so I mean, you know, if you and the most ridiculous, and you can be thankful in Canada that you had Chris Cuthbert, who's one of the best. And I think it was Craig Simpson, because I was stuck, you know, listening to the ESPN broadcast. That you had Cuthbert and Simpson, and I had to listen to Ray Ferraro, who I love, and Sean McDonough, who is one of the most overrated and worst hockey play-by-play announcers out there.
Where does he come from? Where's his local?
I think he did basketball. I mean, I really don't know, but he's terrible.
Right.
But he said, and I am not joking, he said, who will be the next Paul Henderson or the next Mike Eruzione? I never.
So that's a lack of knowledge and a lack of understanding and a lack of context.
No, I don't think it's if he is not smart enough to know that, Paul Henderson scoring in 72 was a game changer, and Mike Eruzione scoring against, I don't care if they were drunk, but a Soviet pro team in 1980, which the anniversary is tomorrow. Yeah. If he doesn't realize that is the ultimate in hyperbole, I don't know what to tell you. All I know is that goal, and I would have said the same thing if Austin Matthews had scored it for the U.S.
Right.
That goal does not match up anywhere close to Henderson or Mike Eruzione or Daryl Sittler in 76 on Zarilla, or any one of them. None.
Well, the vibe in Canada is a bit different because of the overtone of the animosity towards the United States directed generally at President Trump. So remember, Canadians generally conduct themselves with an inferiority complex, and it's not anything to be nasty about. And I'm not trying to denigrate my own citizenry, but this does mean a little bit more to Canadians due to the fact that the President of the United States is threatening to make Canada the 51st state and the whole tariff business. And I was telling my wife this before you and I began to do the show. If none of that was happening, if this were just another event and it was Biden in the White House and Trudeau doing his thing at the House of Commons, there would be some rivalry going on. We'd be interested, but no one would be booing an anthem. You wouldn't hear we probably wouldn't even have seen those fights. It would have been completely different, Mike. And I think you know that. And whether we want to drum this up as being artificial and temporary, it is what it is. But it was all aligned perfectly for the NHL due to the fact that for many a months as we were dreading this period, for it to turn into what it did is perfect for the NHL. They're super happy, and it's given given Canadian hockey fans a little greater sense of pride, albeit artificial. It is what it is. We move on.
Yeah, and if the U.S. or the Swedes or the Finns win in Milano Cortina next February, nobody will remember the NHL Four Nations Faceoff. That's how inconsequential it will be. The Olympics, it's bragging rights.
Right.
It's like, Justin Trudeau, is doing high fives and celebrating, hugging somebody with a Montreal Canadiens jersey when in a few months he'll be the ex-prime minister in Polyev.
Why do you think he was doing that? I mean,
because he changed
the game.
Because he got the one up on Trump, and that's fantastic. It's like, again, I'm not for the whole thing of like, anybody, and and we'll go off of this, but anybody who thinks that Trump is serious about the 51st state stuff doesn't have any observation or imagination. Trump is a troll. He talks out of his rear end. Right. He's trying to negotiate a trade deal with the Canadians. It's all BS. But you know what?
Don't you think Justin Trudeau and guys like Doug Ford are using it to their advantage? Okay, we're the David in this battle with Goliath. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stand up to this guy. Vote for me, or I'm going to stand up to this guy until my last day in office. I'll do whatever I can to right my legacy that had been in the toilet and was just about to be flushed. They're all taking advantage of the this ginned up artificial, imaginary trade war or bi-national disagreement that's going on right now that could become something or just could fall by the wayside when Donald Trump gets occupied with Ukraine and Russia or a bunch of other things that could potentially happen. And in a year from now or even less time, I mean, we could be looking back on this and asking ourselves, what the hell happened?
You know how I know all this is fake? Because it's funny because someone told me, and I don't watch it regularly, but somebody told me that the biggest advertiser on Fox News in the United States is the province of Ontario.
Right.
So you tell me if there's truly like a war on the border, whether that would be the case. All I know is that politics bled into hockey here, and I think to the point that people were criticizing Chantal Kreviazek. I mean, I may be butchering her last name, but for a bad singing of the Canadian national anthem. She's Canadian.
She purposely changed the lyrics.
Yeah.
In protest. Here's another way to look at it. Canadians always watch American news and things that are going on in the United States that really have nothing to do with Canada. We're always a spectator. We're always the bystander. Well, guess what? Now we're in the thick of the news. So in a really sick, twisted way, Donald Trump is legitimizing us, right? And making Canadians relevant for 2 minutes outside of, Lorne Michaels and Jim Carrey and, Ryan Gosling, right?
And ironically, this tournament got more notice on American news,
right,
than anything since, my God, Steve Moore and Todd Bertuzzi.
Wow.
It's pretty sad. But anyway,
Mike, we've alluded to this tournament many a time over the last year. I had no clue that at this point in the aftermath, we'd still be talking about it with all of the implications and all of the conflation that we've done and other media have done with the hockey game and international pride. So, like I said, the NHL has to be happy. And if this is a precursor to the Winter Olympics in a year's time, getting a chance to see some of the players, the new guard, the younger ones who will represent these countries going forward, let's just say it was worth it. Real quick, Matthew Tanti. Hey, Mike and Norm, just wanted to let you know my twin boys, Oak and Quinn, were born. And once they came home, they would be listening to the pod with me. And you know what, Matthew Tanti, don't call yourself Tony. And I'm surprised one of the kids is not named Tony, right? So congratulations. Oak and Quinn, love the names, Matt. Congratulations. Give our best to the missus and the family.
And just a reference to Mike V in the chat. Now the rest of Canada joins Leafs Nation in their hate of Wayne Gretzky.
Right. That's a whole other thing. I mean, the guy's a god up here, and he's
and now he's hated.
Friends with Donald Trump. He's also a millionaire.
Yeah.
Who hates paying taxes and who lives with the hoity-toity. And that 1%. So from a business perspective, I can understand where he's coming from. He's going to have to be careful. He's going to have to be a little bit more diplomatic when it's all said and done. But then again, I could give a fuck, Mike. All I really care about is what the Leafs are going to be doing between now and the trade deadline within 2 weeks. And if their play is going to, continue to be as good as it was leading into this Four Nations event. And if Marner and Matthews can elevate themselves coming off such a high intensity circumstance and carry it forward to the fucking playoffs where it really matters.
And here's where we drift from this to what we care about.
Right.
And being at the rink this morning, covering Sabres practice for the Hockey News. Tage Thompson had been called to Boston to be a disaster backup for Team USA because of injury and illness. And we find out after the game that Vincent Trocheck of the Rangers has a broken finger. Charlie McAvoy took a shot in the shoulder because it was banged up after he got pushed into the post by Joel Armia in the U.S.-Finland game. He checked McDavid in the game against Canada on Saturday, and then apparently has an infection and may be out for the season for the Bruins. Brady Tkachuk may have a broken wrist. Matthew Tkachuk may have a serious groin injury. Austin Matthews, and we'll talk about how he played, but Austin Matthews clearly, because he sat out on Monday, was playing at less than 100%, and we wonder, will he be playing on Saturday against the Carolina Hurricanes, or will he have to miss some time? And my main argument against this tournament was, and I talked to a veteran reporter who told me that my opinion probably goes along with a lot of the owners in the NHL and maybe some of the higher ups in the NHL, is that the NHL gets paid for the playoffs and for the Stanley Cup, not for the Four Nations Faceoff. And if these guys are injured for long term, then Vegas with Shea Theodore or Boston with Charlie McAvoy or anybody else who got hurt in this tournament, those teams are screwed. Mm-hmm. And for what reason? For what?
This is the Convo for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. I've got some lease cash for you between now and the end of the month. It's a short month, like about a week left at Norman Oak Ridge Ford. Every month, an OG or a convert comes and does business with me. And when he or she does, the byproduct is that we can strengthen what Mike and I are doing on a weekly basis. And going forward, probably on a double weekly basis, we're going to be doing 2 shows a week between now and most likely the end of the season into the playoffs. And we hope it's an extended playoff run. Matthews, by all appearances, came out unscathed. However, let's just say he has not been playing at 100% at all this season. And we can debate whether or not his participation in the Four Nations Faceoff event should have happened. It did. So it's what happens going forward is the major question. So we can discuss Matthews, Marner. I mean, on the score sheet, these guys were there, right? They were participating in a style of play that they are going to have to get heavily engaged in April, playoff hockey, and be at the top of their games when they are involved in it, or the Leafs result will resemble results in the past, and that's being eliminated from the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs too soon.
Well, I mean, first with Matthews, he, in my opinion, was the best American player yesterday. He had assisted on both goals. He had 2 point-blank chances that Jordan Binnington robbed him on that were fantastic saves. Now, yeah, I mean, he left Connor McDavid wide open because he went to Marner in the corner, knowing how creative of a playmaker Marner is, and basically was essentially trying to close the gap there to prevent him from making a great pass. He did make the great pass, and McDavid scored the goal. My concern here from the Leaf perspective is that he said leading into the game on Thursday that the reason he sat on Monday was not related to any other injury that he had previously, but a different injury, but that he would be good to go for Thursday. So again, you have a tournament that he gets a different injury than whatever he was dealing with before. And now that's another concern. And now less than 48 hours after that game and playing, 20 some odd minutes, he's playing in a regular season game against Carolina, or will he? We won't find that out until tomorrow morning. But his status, everybody knows the ability of the Leafs to have any kind of success in the Stanley Cup playoffs will be directly tied and correlated to Austin Matthews being effective. And if he's not 100%, he's not as effective as if he was. And that's the whole concern. Mitch Marner had a really good tournament. He scored the game winner against Sweden. He had 2 assists in the game yesterday. And everybody's like saying, well, this is something that is going to have to be factored in when, he signs his new contract. If I'm GM Brad Treliving, I'm like, I don't give a good goddamn what you did in the Four Nations. It's what you do in blue and white in the first round and going forward. And if this team loses in the first round and Mitch Marner is a ghost like he was in the first round against Boston last year, that will go pretty far into him not being back in Toronto. It all matters what he does for the blue and white in the playoffs.
Well, he knows that. We all know that. And whether he exercises his playoff demons or not, he is going to be paid. He's going to be paid in the same way, any winger who can put the, puck in the net and facilitate as many opportunities as he has will get paid and then some. So we're all of that understanding. On Matthews, we'll look back on this season and we will, we'll remember it for being an injury-plagued season. That's what it is. This guy is not going to be 100% at any point this season, Mike. Really. I mean, I don't even know if he may never be the same again. We don't know. I mean, it's not like he's been able to nip these injuries in the bud and just go ham. This whole season, I wouldn't say has been marred, but has been affected by injury. I mean, he'll still put together, respectable numbers and may come up with some massive goals down the stretch and in the playoffs. But this will be an injury-plagued season when all is said and done. The thing for him will be, I'm still under contract. There's still a lot of things left to do, whether they go on a long playoff run or not. Got to get healthy so I can get back to that 50, 55, 60 goal clip because he's, if he's not in his prime already, he's certainly entering it. And these things don't last forever. So Carolina's coming up, and then it's like a 2-week run leading up to the deadline. Looking back on some of the shows as I typically do, Mike, we're kind of spinning our wheels with ideas of how the Leafs are going to improve themselves. Mm-hmm. Outside of some magical deal being made that we're not thinking of. I mean, it's going to be a pretty utilitarian work by Brad Treliving between now and March 7th, if he can do anything at all, because there's nothing glaring or anything that's staring all of us in the face that is so obvious that should be done.
Well, I mean, how this team comes out of this tournament, I mean, again, what we don't know about Matthews, if he is dinged up, then I think that affects the point of view of Treliving when it comes to the deadline, because you can't replace Matthews. You can't, if he's less than 100%, then why would you exhaust assets, very few assets that you have in terms of draft picks, or trade Fraser Minten or Easton Cowan, which I don't think any Leaf fan would be agreeable to. If Austin Matthews is not 100% and, is going to be limited in terms of what he can do in the playoffs, then keep your powder dry.
Do I sense concession coming from you?
Well, no, because I don't know how, if he is hurt more than he has been. I mean, we'll see. Remember, going into this tournament, he had scored 1 goal in his last 6 games. Mm-hmm. He did not score a goal in the tournament. So, you're talking about a player who's clearly having an issue of some sort. Now, whether that means he sits out a couple weeks or whether he toughs it through. Mm-hmm. He toughed it through after he came back the last time and played well for a while and then dropped off. I mean, again, you cannot minimize the effect that a Austin Matthews at less than 100% has on this team. And if he's at 60% and he's playing through something,
right?
Does Brad Treliving go out and say, "Oh, we'll add Yanni Gourde"? Well, all the Yanni Gourdes in the world are not going to make this team get past the first round if Austin Matthews is just a pedestrian version of. So
there's the reality, and then there are the optics. If Brad Treliving does nothing, Leafs Nation's going to scream. Like, you look at the Blue Jays situation right now. Everybody wants Vladdy signed, but at $400 million plus, Ross Atkins has to be looking at this in a variety of ways that fans just don't want to accept when it comes to how they want to spend their money and where they think they're going. So, I mean, they pay these guys a lot of money. They deal in metrics. There's a reason that they have refrained from just opening up the coffers completely to Vladdy Guerrero. When it comes to the Maple Leafs, if Brad Treliving is aware of where Matthews is from health-wise, and how he's looking at this team right now, he may think that the best thing for it to do is to stay the course, get the 110 points, and see if they can catch lightning in a bottle with what they've got, because it's not out of the realm of possibility. The team is highly talented, but expending draft capital or expending opportunity in the future just to slightly augment this group, especially if your main player is not at peak. I mean that's irresponsible, Mike. But he's got to be held to account like any general manager would, worth his weight, dealing with a major fan base that is hungry for more at the deadline. So the guy's in a bit of a pickle, right?
I'm not sure how much of a pickle he's in, because, I mean, okay, you're not going to go and expend assets like we're talking about and add a player who you think can be a difference maker just because Mitch Marner and John Tavares are in the final year of their contracts. I mean, you can say, well, you've got to strike while the iron is hot because you don't know if you're going to have Marner back. Okay, it's really up to you, but if you're the Leafs organization, if you want to spend $13 million on Mitch Marner, then he'll sign here for 8 years. I don't think that that's smart.
Right.
I think that I mean, I am not for signing him to the highest contract of any winger in the history of the NHL. That would be irresponsible. But, if Matthews is effective and close to being healthy, and you think that this is an opportunity in a Eastern Conference that's wide open with with Florida debilitated, with Tkachuk possibly being out for a while, with the New York Rangers probably not making the playoffs, with the Washington Capitals likely the favorite to come out of the East because they had no players in this tournament and are well rested for over 2 weeks.
Right.
I mean, you could say, okay, they have as good a chance as any, but I look at this team and I still see the questions in goal, whether Joseph Woll can do what he needs to do in the first round of the playoffs or going forward.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
Sure, right.
They've got 4 goaltenders, Mike. Like, why would you go and
when you have 4 goaltenders, Norm, you don't have one. And that's the it's like you're
Joseph Woll's biggest fan. Just let the guy go.
I know, but what I'm saying here is we don't know. And if you had Connor Hellebuck in goal, then I'd say, okay, well, like Winnipeg. Winnipeg right now is going to go for it because why? Because they have Connor Hellebuck in goal. They have, they're one of the best teams in the league.
He reminds me of Carey Price.
Hellebuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he does. And I mean, but my point with the Leafs is right now, if you add the questionable health of Austin Matthews to all the other question marks that this team has right now, then I wonder whether Brad Treliving just says, I'm going to go into the playoffs with what we have, maybe play the youngsters, see what we got, and then address what we need to address in the offseason. And I wouldn't criticize him for that. And if they have success after that, then great. And if they don't have success, then we know there are going to be changes.
OG's Converse, what do you think of what Mike is suggesting? That the Leafs refrain from making any major deals, not because they're conceding the season. It's just that there's nothing out there worth expending all of their capital on to make the team that much better with a bunch of rampant and fervent and seething players who are finally ready to take what is theirs, and that's the Stanley Cup. What do you guys think? A couple of comments. Wilfred Witzke. Is Wilfred Witzke an OG or a convert? I don't know if he goes back to 18, so we'll keep him a convert for now. But Wilfred, we may anoint you an OG at some point. McJesus would score 80 with Marner. Isn't that the sad irony of last night's winning goal? You know, Marner to Matthews, and what could be, but will never be, because economically it could never make sense. You made the point, Mike, and you made it so succinctly, and it just hit us all over the head. If you pay Marner crazy money, you'll never have the funds to allocate in such a major way to number 97 if and when he becomes a free agent.
Yeah, I mean, there's, more than likely Edmonton's going to pay him the 20%, and that'll be it.
Do you think Connor McDavid wants his legacy to be, part of an organization from start to finish? Because he can certainly do that. The Oilers are going to back up the Brinks truck for him, but he also has the opportunity to change course. Yeah. And he'll be his one shot.
I'm fairly confident of this, but although I can't speak in certainty because nobody can. If Connor McDavid signs another 8-year contract in Edmonton, he will never win a Stanley Cup. I think
so that's part of the consideration to change and go elsewhere. Wayne Gretzky, was okay with being traded to the Kings after winning 3-4 Stanley Cups with the Oilers. Right. I think he wanted to go elsewhere, especially to Tinseltown, to help elevate the game, and the NHL was applauding that all the way.
Yeah, he got to a Stanley Cup final, but he never won a Stanley Cup after he left Edmonton. In this instance, I think Connor McDavid will never win a Stanley Cup in Edmonton because they can't surround him with enough talent because of the salary situation with Draisaitl, with him, with Darnell Nurse making $9.5 million. It's Toronto West. You cannot pay all these, a small group of players, 50% of your salary cap. It's just not feasible. You have to surround them with talent. And, last year, Florida had multiple levels of talent, and they had a goaltender who was one of the best in the game. I don't think, Edmonton doesn't have one of the best goalies in the game. Their defense is probably 2 players deep. They have McDavid and they have Draisaitl, and they have a couple other forwards like Hyman and Nugent Hopkins, and then not much else after that. And that's the problem. So, with Toronto, that's a lesson to be learned. Can you win with Nylander and Marner and Matthews making over $13 million? My answer to that is no. So,
OG's converts, like the content, subscribe to the channel. I was uploading some of our clips to a TikTok account this past week. We were doing really well, and then the account got suspended. I don't know if you're on TikTok. Can you explain to me what the methodology is, why we'd be suspended? Our X account was suspended too. It's almost like somebody's out to get us. We're so small and almost irrelevant. Why are people reporting us? It's too bad. I'm trying to get that back, and I digress. It's not a major deal. Grant Beckler, let's not get ahead of ourselves. I'm hoping Matthews will come out of this Four Nations event determined to win more. I got to think he's determined to win. He looked like a great part of that USA team. He's always been, at the front of the pack with the Maple Leafs. Talent-wise, he's one of the best there is. But if he's injured and he's not playing at peak, and if the opposition knows that, that's a tough road to hoe, man. Really, for anybody. If you're 3 rounds deep and you're in the finals, and you're just piecing it together, period by period to keep going. Well, you can count yourself among many a player who's out there in that moment doing the exact same thing. But he hasn't been right from the very start of this season. And like I said, I think when we all look back on how 24-25 came together, regardless of the result, we part of how we will analyze things is looking at Austin Matthews and saying he just wasn't at peak, regardless of what kind of stats he put up. A few more comments from you, Mike, and we'll get out of here.
Yeah, I just, I have no idea what specifically the injury is with Matthews, There's been debate whether it's groin or it's sports hernia or back or hip or whatever. I would be shocked if the day after the Leaf season is over with, whether it ends up with them winning the cup or they lose in the first round, that the day after or a couple days after, Austin Matthews is going to have surgery for whatever is ailing him. And it probably keeps him out until training camp in September. So, we don't know what it is. We don't know how severe it is. It's obviously something that he can play through because he's played through it for most of the season, but it clearly is affecting him. So, I mean, if he can get through the rest of the season, if he can be effective in the playoffs, he's clearly not the 69-goal Matthews that has been. He's probably going to end up scoring 40 goals, which for most mere mortals would be enough, but he's one of the 2 or 3 or 4 best players in the league. And this team needs him to be that player. And I just don't think he will be this year.
So the Leafs have Carolina at Scotiabank Arena, and then on Sunday into Chicago. Do you think Matthews and Marner's of the world and, their counterparts who go to their teams, do you think they just, puck drops, let's go? Do you think there's going to be a bit of a malaise? Do you think their teammates are going to carry them through? I mean, how do you think what happened at the Four Nations and just how important the next 6 weeks of the season are going to be align, right? How does what happened propel these guys going forward because it counts, so seriously now?
I don't think the Four Nations is going to propel anything with anybody. I mean, in fact, I think, some Lindy Ruff at Sabres at the arena today said, you're going to have a balance of players who are going to be a little frazzled because they're, think, for example, the New York Rangers who are in Buffalo on Saturday. Trocheck has a broken finger.
Right.
Fox, Kreider played multiple minutes, like over 20 minutes in the game last night. And then you had other players who were, not playing for 10 days. So it's going to be a balance of other players being gassed and other players being rusty. So, that's going to be that way for the entire league. So it's going to be who's healthy, who's, playing the right way. And so that in a way, it's just like every team at every point during the season.
Solution. Mike has never been the same since Aki Berg retired. Solution. I've been thinking that year in and year out.
Yeah, thank God the defenseman who's wearing number 8 right now can actually play defense.
Oh my gosh. I think that's about it for us. It's about the Leafs, just getting back to business. The entire league, obviously, the players are paid big money to put on a good show for the fans. Many of them are doing that, along with, trying to take their games to the level where they can get their teams to compete well enough to earn a playoff position. For the Leafs, it's about maintaining and pushing forward. I mean, a division title would be nice, but Mike, we all know those kinds of accolades mean jack shit when the puck drops on the Stanley Cup playoffs. So I think that's about it. Unless you have anything else to add, I think we wrap her up and then we reconvene sometime this coming week.
Sounds good.
OG's Converse, like the content, subscribe to the channel, share with your friends, let everybody know what we are doing. It's very important. The more we get out there, the greater the chances of us getting immersed into the algorithm where people can discover us for the very first time. We're a small community, but we continue to grow in our own small way, and we appreciate that very much. Convo shorts will be coming up. We divvy up components of this show and get them out there. And who knows, if we get our TikTok account back, we'll continue to do that. So if you're on TikTok, advocate for us. For Mr. Augello in Buffalo, New York. I'm Norm James in London, Ontario. We'll see you in a few days. The Leafs Convo for Oak Ridge Ford is out.